family members. Welcome back to yet another interesting podcast from Sustainability Sisters. It's my humble request to please subscribe and share our channel because we are putting a lot of hard work to collaborate with great people, generate great insights, and put out the right kind of knowledge out there. Also, please watch it till the end because it was a really interesting conversation that happened. If you want to know more insights related to sustainability, this is the place to be. So please watch and enjoy. Hello and welcome to yet another podcast of Sustainability Sisters. And today is really special because we have really pretty Preety with us.
Thank you very much.
It's really interesting how, we met really, really long time ago and we almost had like similar trajectory. So we both did civil engineering. I did from NIT Hamirpur, she did from NIT Silchar. And very interestingly, in my first round of counseling, I got NIT Silchar. So I was there for 2 months. Then there was again an upgradation or something, and then I went to NIT Hamirpur. But so nice to
Upgraded from Silchar to Hamirpur.
yes, I don't know. Is this a real upgrade? But it's just a change of states, I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was nearer for my state. Like I'm in Rajasthan, so I thought it's better to be a little bit closer to parents. So, but then, yeah, how was your engineering and how was your experience all after that? Can you give us?
Sure. Yeah. As Marika, you mentioned that we met in NIT Silchar. So I did my undergrad in civil engineering from NIT Silchar, and I was placed on campus in a PSU, Hospital Services and Consultancy Corporation. It's a mouthful. So I was in Delhi working as a structural design engineer for 4 years, and it was a fantastic journey there in India. But in the fourth year, when I was working in Delhi, I got an opportunity to pursue masters overseas. I got a full scholarship.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I was presented with a list of possibilities that I could do masters in, and environmental engineering was one of it. And it clicked. So if you know Smarik, I'm not sure if you know that I come from a very small tribal community in Northeast India. It's called Miri tribe or Missing tribe in Assam. And growing up, I have always had this very deep connection with nature. The people in our community are very close to nature. So I always wanted to do something in this field. So when I got the opportunity to pursue overseas masters in this field, that was a no-brainer for me. So I came to UNSW in Sydney. It's University of New South Wales in Sydney to do my master's in environmental engineering. And yeah, so it was a fantastic journey. It
Awesome.
completely changed my perspective in life, and now I'm working as a circularity lead in the Asia Pacific part of ETEX Group. So yeah.
Yeah, good that you mentioned that you felt that connection with the environment, and the same thing happened with me also. Like I always felt that we are doing too much industrialization. Everything is going too much. City is too much. Now, if you see
Absolutely.
main city, there are very few green spaces for people to go in, and there is a sisterhood which feels like we are getting disconnected. So that's how we thought of sustainability sisters. Everyone wants to be connected with the environment and also positively contribute towards making our cities more collaborative towards nature. And this is
Absolutely.
also our effort, and hopefully we are going to see that in India as well. So
No,
going
I'm very, very positive we'll see that. I think the intention is there. We just need more guidance, more direction, and more policies, of course, from the government side as well. And
yeah.
you guys have started this fantastic podcast. I would want to
Thank
congratulate you
you.
guys on that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and also like our last speaker, they also mentioned that feminine is the force which is guiding the sustainability. There are a lot of women in sustainability. In fact, you also mentioned
Yes.
that in Australia, like so many women are there in sustainability. So can you give us some stats of how many people, especially ladies, are?
Yes, absolutely. I don't have the numbers right
Yeah,
off my
sure.
head, Smarika, but from my experience, so we have a GBC or Green Building Council of Australia where the CEO is a woman. And whenever I go to any of these conference or seminars on sustainability, I see majority of the leaders or the speakers are women. And that is fantastic to see that. And I feel like us women, we have that, nurturing nature in us. And somehow maybe that's why we are more drawn to professionals like, related to sustainability, I feel.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I felt. I felt like this is not just me, it's a community. And it's
Yes.
a community, and I don't want to be like, I am driving this. Let the community be there and let me be just a part of it. Because it's
Yeah,
just
sure.
so nice to learn from all the women around me and such good insights they're sharing. So on that, I also want to understand what is the difference that you felt when you are working with male dominated systems versus now that you're working in female dominated systems.
Yeah, I think from my experience, and I think it's like comparing apples to oranges because in India I was a construction consultancy firm, and now I'm in a building material manufacturing company, but I am driving the circularity part of the business. So it's a little bit different. But from my experience, when I was working in India, it was mostly about the money making side of the business. So that was the main focus. Whereas the current company that I'm working, and also maybe it helps that the company that I'm working currently, it's a Belgium-based company, it's a Eurocentric business.
Agree.
So yes, of course, we think about the money-making side of the business, but we also want to equally balance the environmental side of things and the
Mm.
social side of things. And Smarika, you would notice that in sustainability, we have three pillars. It's not only about environment, but we also have the social side of things. We have the economic side of things. So for a business to be sustainable, to be profitable, I think we need to balance these three pillars. And I see this more focus on all these three areas now that I'm working here than I experience in India. So I think that's the main difference that I see.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Like when I started working, the systems themselves are sort of, I can say, patriarchal. And as of now, like in the management, people have that mandate that they want to disclose the DEI KPIs, how many women are there
Yes.
in workforce, and they have to disclose what is the gender pay gap. So all of that is forcing them to, onboard more females.
Yes.
Some companies are really smart, like they will onboard females in lower positions, and then there'll be no women in the management. But that is also changing because now the regulation requires you to specify how many are in the management. So that is also
Absolutely.
great going forward.
Yeah. But unfortunately, just recently I was having a discussion with our HR team. Even in Europe and in Australia, even after so much regulations and oversight from the government, we still see huge gender gap imbalance. So there's still that gap that we need to fill. And on top of that, like the DE&I, as you mentioned, so sometimes it's just like ticking a box for a company. Is it coming from within, or is it just a compliance requirement that they want to? So I think we as a business need to shift our mindset to go beyond compliance to really have the
Agree.
shift within. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my hope. Like, hopefully, we are just starting with this as a tick box, and eventually,
Yes.
it's a part of the culture within the company. And there are more women in leadership, and they agree that there is only not only just one way of leadership, that you keep pushing people, push it. If they say it's going to take 10 hours, you say, okay, do it in 2 hours and send it to me back. So that's the culture in consulting. But there is also another thing, like where you are like so driven, you so passionate about the work that you're doing, that the manager doesn't have to say you put 10 hours or you put 2 hours into that. I think that's the soft power that ladies they bring, and that's very much required in the managerial positions also. Maybe India is changing a little bit, and now recently I'll tell you there was a case in EY where a lady, she died because of
Reading
overwork.
about it.
But
Yeah. It's so tragic. It's so sad.
yeah, and the management just completely shrugged it off. And now LinkedIn is full of posts after posts who are like even mentioning the names of the people who have like reached bigger positions. So we don't want that to continue. We want like good pay for people and a good harmonious work-life balance. That's how Sam and
Absolutely.
I work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, again, coming back to those pillars of sustainability, right? So businesses need to not only focus on the money-making side or the environmental side, but also look after their people. Make sure that
Exactly.
everyone is in good health, everyone is being taken care of. So
Wow.
that way, even the employees will be able to give back more to the business. So it's
Exactly.
symbiotic, right? So,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
So very beautiful thought. So coming to the regulatory side of the environmental social governance, how like Australia has recently also passed a compliance like BRSR, that all the companies have to disclose on their ESG KPIs, and you yourself have been a part of the life cycle analysis for building materials. So what have been your learnings so far?
Right, right. So, a part of my work is also to look into all the ESG reporting requirement for our business in Australia. So maybe I can start off by talking with the more mandatory side of things. So in terms of ESG reporting, the mandatory reporting, I've actually made a list. I'll try to go through it very quick because there's quite a lot here in Australia. So the
Yeah.
first one that I want to talk about is the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting in Australia that is regulated by Clean Energy Regulator. So in here, any facilities that trigger certain threshold, and the threshold is above 25 kilotons of GHG emission or more than 100 terajoule of energy consumed or produced. So if companies or facilities that trigger this threshold, then they have to report on their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So we already have this in place in
Right.
Australia, and this is something that we do in our organization as well.
Okay.
And the other one is similar. We have the National Pollution Inventory. Again, in that inventory, we have about 93 species, heavy metal, and other more toxic chemicals that is listed. So if your facility is producing or triggering this threshold, then you have to report on that as well. So we also have this in place. And the other one, which is actually relatively new, and I worked in establishing a framework for this for our business, is the EPCO, or the Australian Packaging Covenant Organization. It's a mouthful. So again, this reporting is mandated at federal level, and this is to have more sustainable packaging for businesses. So what we do is we look into the total packaging that we consume and what are the types of packaging, what types of polymers or timbers or paper, and then what is the recycled content in this packaging? Is it
Mm.
recyclable at end of life? So all of this. And within this, Australia has certain targets under national packaging target that are to be met by 2025. So it has certain ambitions set out for businesses. And then we track on how our packaging is doing against those targets. So this is also, I think, an excellent initiative that is undertaken by the federal government in Australia. And as Marika, I'm telling you, so since this EPCO was legislated, I could literally see when I go to the supermarket, I could see single-use plastic being phased out and replaced with
Wow.
paper bags, and so there's so many changes, and more recycled content in, say, buckets, or those types of
Mhm.
packaging material. So I think for a normal person who is not working in this field, they won't realize how this change has come into being. But for someone who works in this field, I could literally feel that how government policies can influence real changes in the market. So that is so fantastic to see this. Yeah. And the other one, I think I was talking to you the other day about Modern Slavery Act. So this is more on the social side of sustainability. So in 2018, Australia enacted the Modern Slavery Act. So under this, every company that crosses a certain threshold of revenue, I think it's $100 million revenue, so we fall into that, will have to publish an annual modern slavery report. So
Okay.
it's quite interesting. So for the first time, I think a social side of ESG has been mandated in Australia, and that was again fantastic to see this initiative from the Australian government. So I don't know how much you know about this, Marika, but what is modern slavery, right? So
Mm.
it encompasses many types of unethical practices in business. Unfortunately, a lot of which we see in Asian countries, including, say, forced labor, human trafficking, child labor, this sort of practices. So Australian government want to ensure that for any business that is functioning in Australia or does business with Australia, will try to at least work towards a more ethical supply chain, global supply chain. That's the idea behind this reporting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good that we are talking about it when like Indian government has just jumped into action after that EY case. So I think we are
yeah,
going to be seeing some of the legislations around modern slavery, but this is like really new. Uh, in like the same company which is functioning in India, and the same company in Europe is going to have different kind of work culture, and they
yes,
openly also accept that you guys
yes,
have to work more somehow, but it's not possible now because
yeah,
we are surrounded by so many things. We have so much to do. It's not at all possible. Our young population in India, they are getting heart attacks and they're dying in like
so
40s.
sad.
It's really now the government has to take some action.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think even in terms of the recent case that the Kolkata case, so the
Yes.
government need to make sure that people are taken care of. There's such
Yeah.
a I know that we Indians we work so hard.
Yeah.
We give 110% in our job, and it is the responsibility of the government, the our employers to make sure that we have a safe, secure, and a healthy work environment. That is so important. And yeah, so for this the Modern Slavery Act that came into being actually initially it was legislated in the UK, and
Hmm.
then Australia followed suit, and hopefully India can follow
It's
into this
coming up.
good
Yes, I
yeah
saw
this good
a
step.
statement from Shashi Tharoor, and he
Mm,
said he's going to take it really seriously. And now that the opposition also has a lot of power, so could be a lot of real
absolutely.
good policies coming
Yeah,
really soon. So we have
yeah,
started with BRSR, which is Business Sustainability Reporting Regulation, and this time around 1,000 companies are going to be disclosing on multiple KPIs. How
yeah.
aware the market is, I'm not sure, but I think this is the first step. They still question, okay,
Yeah.
what's the need of going net zero, or like India's ambition is 2070, so they are like chilled as of now. They don't want to do anything before 2030.
Right. Yeah, I honestly feel like yes, it is optimistic to expect companies to do voluntary take voluntary actions, but I feel like in order to see real change, it needs to come from the government side. I feel like you
Agree.
need to mandate some of it. Only then it gives incentive for companies to take actions. Um, yeah, and the other thing is, so when there is any this sort of new ESG reporting requirements, so what kind of support is given from the government to help organizations navigate this reporting? I think that's another important piece because from my experience working in Australia, so we have fantastic regulatory bodies within the federal government, within the state government. So there's another one that is coming up next year, TCFD, this Task Force on
Mm.
Climate Related Financial Disclosure.
Right.
Again, it is quite new,
Yeah.
but we are confident that we can navigate it because we also know that from our past experience that the government will be providing the required support, trainings, research material, everything will be published to help us navigate this reporting. So, what sort of support do you guys get in India?
So far, I'm not aware of any kind of support that it's the consulting firms which corporates approach if they want
Yeah,
clarity on some
right.
kind of definitions. For instance, for banks, suppose they have to disclose their scope 1 emissions. So it's not
Yeah,
material for them, but now the regulator says that you have to disclose on all the KPIs. See, some KPIs are not material for some industries, and that
yeah,
clarity they only get from
mm,
like talking to consultants or like external only. So I
right.
just remember googling BRSR training, something like that, and I think some trainings came up, but I think it was just for few selected industry people
Mm,
and not everyone was a part of those. Like for
mm,
instance, some people from maybe Tata or like Reliance or big groups will be a part, but not like there's no system as such as of now. And hopefully I think we can learn from Australian model that they already think about the support system which needs to go in
absolutely. That's
place
step one. Yeah.
before they roll out BRS or any kind of regulation, because then the companies, they are left on their own now, go to consulting.
Absolutely, yeah. The onus is on the company. And the other piece that I want to talk about, so when we roll out reporting requirement like this, so confident are we that the companies are doing it the right way? So what is the audit process going to be? What is the oversight on this? I think that's another piece of um, thinking that, governments they need to think about when they roll out such
So
reporting
as of now,
requirements.
I think like about the auditors, I think Big Four have the most powers, and their audits
Yeah,
also mean, because they have been in the industry for a long time, their
yeah,
audits do not raise a lot of questions if the report has
mm,
been audited by some
yeah,
of them. So I
yeah.
think that's what most people are doing. Most Indian companies are also doing.
That's
But
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot of work for, I think, auditor also, since like a
it
lot
is.
of
It is.
regulation is suddenly coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, but it's good. It means the market is moving, the mindset is shifting, so we are gearing towards a positive direction. So
yes,
better, yeah, better than not doing anything, I guess.
yeah. So talking about the modern slavery that you mentioned, what kind of KPIs or indicators are you looking at, if you can
Right.
share?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, so companies above certain threshold of revenue, they will have to publish an annual modern slavery statement. So in that statement, so we have a supporting document provided by the government. So they have seven. I can link in the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast if
sure.
anyone's in. It's
Yes,
publicly
yeah.
available. So there
I'm
are seven criteria that we need to report on. So it starts with some general information about the company and the location of your global supply chain. And then what we have to do is we have to assess the risk of modern slavery or the vulnerability of your business,
okay.
both operation as well as your global supply chain in terms of modern slavery risk. So, for example, I can maybe explain this with an example from China. So, we import certain raw material from China. So, what we do is we look into what is the volume of transaction in terms of the say tons of raw material in terms of the dollar value that we pay them. And then we also look into which part of China, say, it is coming from. And there is a fantastic piece of document called Global Slavery Index. It is published by the Minderoo Foundation. Again, I can link it if you
Sure.
want. So this GSI, what it does is, so these people in Minderoo Foundation, they have looked into this profile of different countries and they have looked into what is the government policies, what is the general practice of businesses in these countries, how vulnerable businesses are to modern slavery. So they have done this fantastic piece of research and they have ranked different countries in terms of the vulnerability towards modern slavery. So this is what we do. So in my company, we look into the entire volume, entire spread of global supply chain. What is the volume of transaction? What is the dollar value? And then how vulnerable this country is for modern slavery. And then we take into account all of these factors. And then we do our own internal risk assessment. And then we publish in the report, okay, so this say, for example, just hypothetical number, 10% of our uh, total transaction in our company is vulnerable to high risk of modern slavery. And 90% say is coming from Australian suppliers. And we are pretty confident that they have good practices over here. And then this is more like less risk towards modern slavery. And we not only just leave it on the stuff that we find in the report, we also do individual So if it is a larger transaction with a certain supplier, we also look into if there has been any prosecution on any human traffic or any sort of violation in the past. So we look into the company history as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are the KPIs that we report on in the yeah, modern
Very
slavery statement.
interesting. Very interesting. It's similar to, if India is suppose exporting some things to Australia, and Australia
Yes,
has very strict regulation, then they might like stop importing if it looks really risky for them.
absolutely, absolutely.
So
So
just
we know that a lot of sorry for the interruptions, Marika, but I know a lot of textile product comes from India and Bangladesh to Australia.
yes.
And I am pretty sure that these companies who are importing these products from, say, Bangladesh or India or Vietnam, so the suppliers in Australia had to go through this assessment process. It's part of the due diligence in this modern slavery reporting.
Wow. So, just curious, if suppose India is there in their suppliers, and in general it looks more vulnerable, then they will say that's highly vulnerable or
Yes.
high risk country, right?
Yes, Yes.
Okay.
And
So
then we don't really leave there. So the next step is how do we work with the suppliers to educate them to how do we ensure that we have the confidence to do business with them, that they have an ethical supply chain. So what I'm trying to say is just because we are doing business with someone in China or India doesn't mean automatically that we have to stop,
yeah.
having this transaction with them. But it's more to understand their business model, how confident we are that they have an ethical supply chain. And if we are suspicious, then we can, of course, alert them and we can educate them so that they themselves change their business model to make it more transparent, more ethical. So that's the idea behind this reporting, not to
Very
discard them, but to
interesting.
work with them, right?
Very awesome, awesome. So, so what is your experience with working with suppliers? Are they already aware, or do they need more awareness? And how does modern slavery, if you have any idea, currently looks like? Is it high risk, or like people are understanding and they are evolving?
Absolutely. So coming back to your first question, uh, oftentimes when we reach out to supplier to get this information, they are clueless about what this is. And especially if you're talking about an overseas supplier, they will be clueless. That's given. So what we try and do is educate them. So we just don't send them a questionnaire, hey, fill this up. So we try and educate them that this is the legislative requirement in Australia. So in order for us to continue business, we have to do this. And also to give them the confidence that whatever they're telling us will be confidential unless there is something suspicious. So to give them the confidence that they can share their information without the fear of abandonment, and to give them the confidence that you want to work with them, not to sort of blacklist them or anything. So
Mm.
that's the first piece of it, to educate them.
Okay.
And sorry, the second question was around my experience of the vulnerability, right? So
Right.
I'll give you an example. So in Australia, the government is encouraging the use of solar panels in residential and commercial projects. And of course, we in our business is also, I think about 20% of the current electricity consumption is coming from our own solar panels. And most of the solar panels are imported from China. And unfortunately, this is in the GSI, Global Slavery Index report by Minderoo Foundation. Almost every solar panel that is imported from China will have a high probability of being associated with some form of modern slavery. So this is unfortunately the current state that we are living in. So I cannot say with very high confidence that for products we are importing that is free of modern slavery. So it's very hard to say today. But for products that we are using that are manufactured in Australia, I think I'm much more confident to say that it is relatively less vulnerable to modern slavery compared to something that we import from, say, Asia or Africa or South America. So,
Oh, very
yeah.
interesting. And it's good to know that, how systematically Australia is also moving towards their goals, more recycled content in their packaging. So I want to ask you about the opportunities which Indian youth might have, like now that you have experience of the Australian systems, and now you also know that we are also just starting. So, what kind of gaps can Indian youth come up and fill in the Indian system? Like, for instance, one is just the supplier engagement and training on these KPIs. So, what are all the different areas of ESG?
Yeah, so but Smarika, there's a saying in sustainability, what cannot be measured cannot be managed. So I think for India, first we have to go back to the basic and understand our baseline. Do companies today, businesses today know what is the scope one and what is the scope two emission? That should be relatively easy, right? So scope three is a whole another
Yeah.
can of worm that we are not going to open maybe today.
Yeah.
But at least, yeah. So I think that's every business, no matter what the size of the business is, need to understand what is the scope one and scope two emission. And if it is a building material manufacturing company or any other manufacturing company, I think they also need to understand the footprint of their product. So I think these are the basics that we need to start working from. And that is more from maybe an organizational perspective. And there is a lot of stuff that can be done from the legislative side as well. So I think it needs to go hand in hand.
Hmm.
We need the youth to be more aware, the consumers to be more aware. We need organizations to take the onus on them to work towards a more sustainable future. And also we need some mandatory requirements, maybe sorry, some legislative requirements mandated by the government. I think if all of this works together, we have a very bright future ahead for India.
Yeah, I am also really hopeful about India because now that we are so much aware, I think
Yeah.
we can take that action. We can ask the policy maker to have this kind of policy in place. And after that Kolkata case, I am so surprised. Like, people are still on the streets and they are not backing down. So this
Not
is the
giving up.
kind of, yeah, this is the kind of India that we want.
Absolutely. Yes, we are the largest democracy in the world, right? So the power is within the people. So we
Yeah.
need to elect the right politicians, we need to elect right representative who has more liberal views, say, more progressive views. So
Hmm.
because ultimately they can influence a lot of policy making. So
Agree.
I think, yeah, that's
And
another part of
like
it.
saying liberal, I mean, we need a balance because see, when we started, we were a forest culture and
Yeah.
we were living in symphony with the forest, mountain, and now we have just copied West so much that now we have to like go back again. So we were
Now let's skip
balanced.
copying West because West is doing some very progressive stuff in terms of ESG. So
Yes,
let's
that we
also
want to
maybe follow
copy.
that. Yes, exactly. Just
Exactly.
yesterday I was talking to my grandma. So my grandma, she lives in Assam, in a far northeastern part of India. So she was telling me how hot it is. Like, when I was growing up, people didn't even have like ceiling fan or any sort
Mhm.
of, and today, even with you can't live without an AC. So that's the situation in even like far off Assam. So it's just so sad how things have changed. Unfortunately, not in the right way over the past couple of decades. That's why I think when we talk about sustainability, it's not only about reducing your consumption, but to go a step beyond that and think about how we can undo the damage that we
Yeah.
have done in generations. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting that you bring this up because I have a conversation that is lined up from a speaker, and then she's going to talk about more adaptation, more resilience, because that is also required.
Yeah.
Undoing is like a lot of work again. So I was reading that Brazilian farmers, they are burning the Amazon forest just to make more space for raising animals, and so those kind of habits also we need to change. So on that, we
Absolutely.
are almost close to finishing. Do you want to share some of the habits that you have in your daily life just to reduce your own carbon footprint, like how you are integrating
Absolutely.
sustainability?
I am very ashamed to admit this, Marika, but I used to be a shopaholic and I am not proud of it. That was the old me.
Yeah.
But I think now at an individual level, I have consciously made an effort to cut down my consumption and also to look into when we look into, say, buying products, to just look at the label, it's like is there any sort of like recycle content in it? Is it sourced ethically? So this sort of smaller stuff. And another thing, I'm not going vegan, but I'm trying to cut down on my non-veg consumption. So that's another side of it. And
Awesome.
also, traveling and all, I don't own a car, so I try and take the public transport whenever I have to go anywhere. So this sort of
Awesome.
smaller stuff.
Those are really beautiful steps, Preeti, and thank you very much for coming here. Can you
Thank you.
please ask our viewers to like, share, and subscribe to our channel?
Absolutely. Please like, subscribe, and to
Share,
Sustainability
because it
Sisters.
was
Yeah.
such a
Comment.
beautiful conversation, and I learned a lot, in fact, and I'm sure everyone's going to learn so much more, and everyone's going to be more curious of what is happening in Australia, how can it be replicated in India. It was really insightful. Thank you for joining us today, Preeti, and love you.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's a pleasure to be here and good luck on
Thank
the
you. You
podcast.
too.
Thank you.